Opposed? Being none. Any thoughts on the agenda? Is it all good?
The agenda's ready to go, sir.
Yep. And entertain a motion to approve the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the agenda as presented.
Second?
Motion and second. No questions. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Move on to new business and minor subdivision replat lots 5 and 6, Oakview Estates.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
All right. Minor subdivision replat, lots 5 and 6, Oakview Estates. This proposal is located west of Fayetteville off of Arkansas Highway 16. It is located entirely within the unincorporated area of the county. The proposed replat location is shown here outlined in black. There are several existing buildings, including 2 existing residences. This slide shows the original lots 5A and 6A of 5.47 and 5.70 acres respectively. The green arrows indicate the path of Arkansas State Highway 16. This slide displays the proposed tracts 6A of 5.06 and 6.11 acres respectively. Again, the green arrows indicate the path of Arkansas State Highway 16. The yellow area is being transferred from 6A to 5A. I conducted a site visit on March 19, 2019. This photo was taken facing west-northwest at the stake indicated by the red arrow displaying the southern boundary of the properties. This photo displays the property from the north facing south, with the red arrow indicating the stake displaying the north boundary of the properties. This photo displays road access from the properties to Arkansas Highway 16 facing north, while this photo displays the road access from the properties to Arkansas Highway 16 facing south. Staff recommends approval of the proposed minor subdivision replat lots 5A and 6A Oakview Estates with conditions. Are there any questions?
Any questions for staff? Is there anyone here from the public that wanted to comment? All right, hearing none, what's your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve minor subdivision replat lots 5 and 6 Oakview Estates as presented.
Second.
Okay, have a motion second. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Being none. Thank you very much. Minor subdivision replat lot B3, book out minor subdivision.
Minor subdivision replat lot B3, book out minor subdivision. This proposal is located east of Fayetteville off of Lake Sequoia Road. It is located entirely within the unincorporated area of the county. The proposed replat location is shown here outlined in black. There are several existing buildings, including a shed, a garage, and a residence. This slide displays the original lot B3 of 5.05 acres. The green arrow indicates Lake Sequoia Road, while the red line is the access easement onto the property, which is 30 feet wide. This slide displays the proposed tracts B3A, B3B, and B3C of 1.08, 1.45, and 2.52 acres, respectively. Again, the green arrow indicates Lake Sequoia Road. With this type of development, the access easement will be considered a private road development and handled accordingly. A private road of the current 30-foot width can accommodate no more than 4 residences per the county regulations. I conducted a site visit on March 19, 2019. This photo features the site view of Lake Sequoia Road to the east of the proposed easement. The speed limit is 45 miles per hour. This photo features the site view of Lake Sequoia Road to the west of the proposed easement. And this photo provides a view of the easement from Lake Sequoia Road itself. And staff recommends approval of the proposed minor subdivision replat Lot B3 Bookout subdivision. Do you have any questions?
Questions of staff? If there aren't any, is anyone here from the public that want to comment on this project? All right, seeing none, back to the board. Entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the minor subdivision replat, Bookout minor subdivision, subject to staff recommendations.
Motion second. Any further questions? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There is none. All right, move into conditional use permit hearing of Smith Towing and Recovery, CUP.
Can you hear me? Do I speak louder? Okay. The project is located just west of Winslow along Wind Creek Road, Washington County 222. As you exit the I-49 highway, you'll head west, then turn north along Wind Creek. The site is the first driveway on the right. Josh and Amanda Smith would like to use this 1-acre parcel as a towing and impound recovery yard. There will be a total of 2 employees, which are the applicants, though there will not be any employees on the site unless there is a vehicle being impounded or released. The average time spent per vehicle, according to the applicants, is approximately 30 minutes at a time. The applicant has cleared the majority of the trees on about half an acre of the property to make room for the towing and impound yard. Per the Arkansas State Towing Board, a small metal sign measuring approximately 24 by 30 has been placed on the fence. The fence is currently a work in progress. The applicant states they will construct the fence to be 8 feet tall with an additional 3 feet of barbed wire at the top of a 2x2 woven wire. They will also install metal sheeting to help obstruct visibility of vehicles from the road. The red line is where the Washington County Road Department right-of-way is. In the distance is a white flag where there is a Washington Water Authority water main. Here is a close-up. Washington Water Authority is requiring the applicants encase the water main to protect it during the driveway compaction and from the heavy tow trucks and other vehicles that will cross it possibly multiple times a day. This particular portion of the water distribution system services approximately 100 customers, including Devil's Den State Park. Here is a study that Washington Water Authority did to find the water main on the Smiths' property. I've highlighted the Wind Creek Road right-of-way in red. The bold blue dashed line is the 8-inch water main. Washington Water Authority has also considered other forms of protecting the water main, such as a steel plate as opposed to concrete encasing. Preliminary plans for a steel plate have been submitted, and Washington Water Authority has preliminarily approved the construction per those details pending a stamp by a professional engineer. The Washington County Fire Marshal has stated that the driveway must be 20 feet wide and compacted to 75,000 pounds. The turning radius at the driveway must have a 38-foot radius. The applicant has indicated on this site plan their intent to comply with the fire marshal's requirements. Ozarks Electric has stated there is a 30-foot utility easement along the overhead line. The applicant does not plan on constructing a building or utilizing any type of septic. This is an image of the swale facing northeast. This is the swale facing southwest. This is what the swale looks like after it rains. And this is looking northeast. This is southeast. This is the applicant's driveway. And here is another view of the driveway and the swale. These images were sent to the Washington County contracting engineer, Zach Moore. Mr. Moore stated that the swale alongside the road is not deep enough to fit a pipe underneath the driveway with that substantial regrading of the roadside ditch. Therefore, allowing the swale to continue across the proposed gravel driveway and not be dammed up by the driveway will be a requirement. Staff feels that items 1 through 3 of the criteria for the allowance of conditional uses have been met. Items 4 through 7 are more subjective in nature. On March 7th, staff mailed a total of 8 notifications. The parcels in the purple represent the neighbors within 300 feet of the applicant's proposed project whom received a notification. To date, staff has received a total of 17 notifications. The purple circle represents a half-mile radius from the project parcel. The blue circle is 1 mile. Staff was unable to map one of the notifications due to the lack of address. Some of the neighbors were presented multiple parcels. That's where there's multiple colors on the map. A copy of this map is in your update packet along with all of the comments received to date. Here is a close-up of the half-mile buffer. All of the comments staff received were opposed to the project. The comments stated concern about diminished value of property, that the vehicles towed into the yard will leak chemicals that are environmentally hazardous. There are wells nearby that are still being used for drinking water. The comment stated safety concerns if an owner of a vehicle gets disgruntled that their vehicle has been impounded, what might happen. The yard will also start to look like a junkyard. Also, what happens to the vehicles if they are not claimed or recovered? The proposed metal sheeting fence may be an eyesore. Some comments voiced concern that the business is being placed in a heavily agricultural and residential area. The nature of the towing and recovery business is a 24-hour operation. There are concerns about the noise from the towed and/or impounded vehicles being placed in the yard during the quiet night hours. This is the current view for the surrounding neighbors. In order to assist with the visual mitigation of the towing yard, opaque privacy fencing screening must be placed on the east, north, and west sides. Plans for the screening must be submitted and approved by the planning department. In addition, a landscaping plan must be submitted and approved. No inoperable vehicles may be visible from the county road. The site must also remain generally neat and organized. At this time, staff is withholding recommendation of the proposed Smith Towing and Recovery Impound Conditional Use Permit request. Staff urges the Planning Board to listen to the support and to the opposition in order to determine whether or not the project has met the compatibility requirements. The conditions are as follows, and please know that these conditions have changed since the time of your staff report. A copy of these updated conditions are in your packet as well as on the screen. Any questions?
Yes, I have one question. The gravel drive going into the property,
Yes.
the fire chief at Boston Mountain did not require that to be gravel, but the fire marshal did require it.
That's
Is that
correct.
correct? Okay,
Yes.
that's it.
Cedar, what'd you say the time frame was that the length that these vehicles would stay on there?
I don't think I said, but generally, I think it's, is it 30 days?
If they stay 30 days, then I can remove them from the facility, and then I send in and get a title order from the state for them. Most of the time, if insurance companies still want it, as long as we've had in these 9 days, they generally get around an IA or Copart comes and picks them up, they send a truck, they get them, and they're gone.
Any other
Yeah.
responses? I'd urge you to speak into the microphone so we can have
Yeah.
that on the record, please.
Sid, if you're through, we'll just,
Of course.
Here, I got one more. What is the time frame between the sunny picture and the rainy picture?
Oh, hold on here. Let me go back. I have some date stamps. So this was March 13th. That's the rainy day. And this was March 8th.
So 5 days, and there's a different, there's another vehicle there.
But this was, we had just had a light rain.
Yeah, I know, but I'm looking at the pictures, and there's another vehicle there, so that means the other two have been sitting there for, I was just trying to determine the length of time that it would that they would be there. Had another question, lost my train of thought.
We get the applicant, or, yeah, just state your name for the record, and,
Josh Smith.
I don't know if you wanted to respond, Joe, to any specific,
No, I
Okay.
remember my question now. How long has this business been operating without the proper?
From my understanding, towards the end of last year, once it was made clear to planning that Mr. Smith was not complying with our ordinances, and we followed, basically are assisting him with coming to compliance.
So he can, so once you find out he's non-compliant, then
We-
he can still
we ask-
run the business until he comes before here? Or does
We
he, you
asked
shut
him
him
to,
down?
we asked him to stop.
Okay, and did he or did he not?
We had reports that there were still vehicles being towed on and off the property.
Okay.
yes.
Just to respond to one thing you said, shut him down. The planning department cannot shut anybody down technically. I mean, anything that goes, anytime we shut someone down, the only way we legally can do that is we have to get a court order, an injunction from a court. And so it has to go into a legal process. And at this time, there has been no legal filing against Mr. Smith at this time.
Okay, but what I'm getting at is, it was brought before us that he was
Sure.
non-compliant.
Right,
And he was asked, we wasn't ordered, but he was asked
correct.
to cease.
I was just saying, as
But
far
the
as shutting him
business-
down,
but
the county hasn't.
Per information, he's still been operating. Okay.
I didn't find the point where there was a fence. Is in your conditions?
Oh, yes, in my conditions, let me look at them really quickly.
10/22/18 was my first visit to the site.
On the very last page of your update packet, there are a list of conditions, and it's under screening conditions, which is the second to last little section. And it says opaque privacy screening must be submitted and approved. Landscaping plan must be submitted and approved, and no inoperable vehicles may be visible from the county road.
Okay, I see it now. I see it now, thank you.
Did you have any additional comments you wanted to make? I called you up because I thought Joe was going to ask you a question, so. Do you have anything else you want to comment on?
The cars that's in the impound currently, there was one that was added after I went down to the planning office, the county operations building. That was on the morning of March 1st, the day that the county cop cars was run over by the semi on the interstate. We had to get those cars. We was the only towing company that could get there. We actually went up the interstate the wrong way. They had it shut down to Chester a couple hours that morning. So I had to put that car in there. You can't tow a county vehicle off a sheriff's car, especially I guess they have evidence or whatever in them. They won't let you unhook them. Once you hook onto them, you got to go to the jail with them. The other cars that's in there, those cars have been cleaned up and removed from the impound by now, but I was told by the planning staff at the operations building, no commercial activity to be done at that impound. So if I load the cars on my rollback and I haul them to TRG, which is a scrapyard in Fayetteville, because all these cars are mine, that's commercial. You know, you receive money for that. I didn't want to be in trouble for that. We are still currently operating. I've got state police contracts I have to fulfill. I've been taking the cars to my house, to my property. And that's pretty much it. I mean, this deal's a necessity, not only for, it's for the people. I'm on the fire department at Winslow. We run lots of car wrecks on the interstate. If you've ever been on the interstate, when people's wrecking and cars are going everywhere, it's not a real good place to be. The way that this come about is some troopers asked me if I had any land around. I talked to them and told them I did on the Winslow exit. I come to the county and got a DBA. I didn't wait to build my fence. I didn't come before y'all. I didn't know that. I come here and got a DBA in the towing company name. Nobody said anything about it. And we put it in, and I am the only towing company down there. I noticed in some of the letters that was wrote, Drummond's Towing, there was 2 Drummonds had towing companies in Winslow. DNS Body Shop was one of them. His name's Dewey Drummond, and they're actually hauling for Copart now. They just haul all salvage vehicles. That's all they do. They got off the state police rotation. I actually took their spot on rotation. Drummond's Wrecker Service at Brentwood, he's not permitted with the tow board, none of that. And American Towing is actually in Greenland now. So we're the only one. I'm the only one in Winslow. I think you guys approved American Towing's yard at Greenland. You can't have satellite yards in this. You've got one location and that's where it's at. Then that's per state police, if you're gonna tow for the state police. Now, if you're gonna tow for yourself, you can do whatever you want, I guess, but that's on the state police side. But that's and that's all that we tow for, pretty much. I do some owner request stuff, but most of my stuff's just for state police.
All right,
I assume that the reason you started without approval is because you were unaware of the regulations.
Yeah, I didn't know about the
okay.
regulations, yeah.
That's what.
see if anybody else, unless you had another question. Thank you very much. We'll call you back up if we need you. Anybody else here from the public that wanted to comment? And like I say, just state your name, and if you're a neighbor, kind of give us
Charles Clem.
some direction. Yeah.
I live about 50 yards from that facility.
Okay.
I'm building a 2-story house, and it's a hell of an eyesore, fellas. That's all I can tell you. And there's been my neighbor, Mike Pinion, lives right across the road. There's a pond just adjacent, about 35 feet due southwest of the place, and he has a well right straight across the road, close to the county road, and that's his drinking water. That's his water, period. And he is concerned, and I'm concerned for him, and the head of the Wind Creek watershed that goes into West Fork is just down from Backwoods Beer and Goods. It goes through my yard, and the bottom of it is a meadow, and fluids that run off them vehicles over time is going to trickle into that, and there's a lot of people who don't want it, and Mike Pinion dang sure don't want it, because it's his drinking water. That pond there, that's probably where he gets his water, because it's straight across from it. And he's had that water well for, well, his dad had it, probably 70, 75 years it's been there. And that's all he's got for water. He is not hooked into the water authority. And I've had 9 vehicles come to my house, individuals, some of them I knew and some of them I didn't. And they said that is one hell of an eyesore. And they thought I was building it, but it wasn't me. It was Josh Smith and company, and it's right on our property line in my yard. And that's gonna be what I got to look at. And I've got a 2-story house, and it's 33 feet tall, 2-story. All you're gonna see is, I don't care if he builds a wall 30 foot tall, you're gonna be able to see it. And I'm just looking out for my own personal goods on the value of my real estate, and everybody else out there, they don't want it there. Nobody out there wants it. It's just, I like Josh Smith and his wife and his family, but he just picked a bad spot. He's got a large farm in Winslow across the railroad tracks. He could have put it on. And that's about all I got to say, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Yeah, just state your name and.
I'm
Yeah.
Mike Burney. I live just up Bethlehem Road from the site. We've bought a property there, about 9 years ago, to restore. It's a big colonial house. And we've put in about 250 grand into this property in the last 9 years. And just purchased some heavy equipment to do about another 80,000 worth of work. And this is a big problem for us, because when you spend that kind of money on a property, anybody interested in purchasing something like that at that price point, they're not going to want to drive into a neighborhood where this is the head of it. And we have to see this every day. There was a couple comments that were made about the vehicles that are there now. So a couple of them have been there for well over a month. I took pictures today leaving. Every one of the vehicles in the pictures that you guys have looked at are still there. None of them have been cleaned up. None of them have been removed. So, for me, I've been a business owner for 25 years, and I've never really seen, a commercial company come into a residential area and just decide to go ahead and build something like this without any type of approvals or permitting. And that's standard practice. I mean, when you file for your articles of incorporation, there's plenty of resources for all of that to tell you these are the things that you need to do to follow up with getting approval for this. So, our primary concern is really the looks of the property, how it affects not just our values, but the water sources as well. That watershed runs from the backside of that property all the way down through the holler, and it actually crosses back behind my property. We were in the process of getting ready to drill a well, and we're told to stop until we figure out how this is going to impact that watershed. So other than that, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Just 1 minute. We'll let you respond at the end of these.
My name is Dwight Camp, and I live in the immediate vicinity of this proposition, probably 75 yards, I suspect. I vehemently disapprove of this. The adverse effect of our immediate property and homes and the lifestyle there is something that we do not agree with. In addition to the very nature of this type of business, I think, creates a life of its own through the hazardous waste of oil and gasoline and other liquids that seep into the ground and go right into our water system. Disagree with that. The noise and just the sight of this thing, as Mr. Clem I don't think he mentioned it, but he must be 15, 20 yards from this thing, from his home. We're about 75 yards from it. I would appreciate it if you would give serious consideration to the disapproval of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments.
When we was building that fence in that area, the reason it is on that property line is Mr. Clem actually asked us to put that on that property line. He had dug the front post hole and had that line marked. He asked us to put that fence on that property line so he knew where his property line was. And adjacent back to the headwaters of Wind Creek, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the beer store, but their septic goes right in the bottom of that. Their lateral lines come right out of their store, go right over toward Mr. Clem's, run right down in the bottom of that holler. So I don't think that, and this land's perked, it's had a perk test and stuff, but there's not that much oil leakage out of these cars. If any of you guys have ever busted a radiator or anything like that, most of your fluids out of your radiators and stuff, they leak at the scene of the accident. Gasoline, I don't think I've towed any cars in that had the fuel tanks busted on them. Our biggest deal most of the time is antifreeze, and it runs out at the scene of the wreck. Occasionally you'll have some transmission fluid, stuff like that, but that's just the nature of car wrecks. Do I think this is running down into the headwaters of Wind Creek? No. The pond that's adjacent that Mr. Clem was talking about there across from that, that pond goes dry. That's a duck nest pond. I actually took my dozer and pushed a bunch of brush into it because it's a mosquito trap's what it is. There's just, it's not that, like it's a great big pond. But he asked for that fence to be on the property line, and that's why that fence is there. I would have moved the fence back if he would ask me, but he came to us straight forward and asked us to put that on the line. And that's why that it's on the line like it is now. Thank you.
Anybody else here from the public?
Well, let me correct Mr. Smith on that. I did not ask them to put it in the 2 holes that I already dug for the property line. I just told him this is where this corner is and this is where this corner is in a 1 acre lot of your property. And that's where they put it. I mean, this thing's in my backyard, sir. I mean, what else can I say? I mean, property value on my property is gonna go to hell. I mean, it's an eyesore, and he has bucked all of you. The planning commission, the water department, the road department, and that's just what it is. And that's how it is. And I just ask you that you give it a hell of a good thought before you say yes or no. And we got Lee Creek across the road, the head of Lee Creek. I'm not saying these flues are gonna just run over there tomorrow, but they'll get over there eventually. That is very porous soil. And, I mean, you can get a perk test out there, and it perk tests good. It's real good. It's gravelly soil, and it does run down into Wind Creek. Lee Creek's across the road, but there you go with going to Devil's Den. That's all I got to say, sir. Thank you.
Comments? Anyone else here from the public that wanted to address it?
Can I ask a question though?
Well, if you'll come to the mic, state your name and.
Jackie Donaghy, and I live just across from it. So out my dad's window, you see it. So I think I heard that they have to build a fence just on 3 sides. Is that correct? So what about the south side? There's no fence any there? It's just 3 sides? And then what happens if they get a little full and start encroaching out? What happens then, and who monitors that? I know I heard him say something about 30 days, and they tow that off. But who monitors that? So it doesn't become a junkyard.
City, you'll clarify on the
Thank you.
the screening and then enforcement. I can address enforcement. We do enforcement by complaint. The county doesn't have the staff or the resources to patrol and check on these things, so.
So then it's up to the neighbors to kind of keep an eye on their
That's
eyesore
kind of how
and
it works.
complain.
If you think they're not, in compliance, then you'd have to
Okay,
call.
so what happens, my question is, so what happens then if we look out there and it has become a junkyard? What happens then? I mean, do they have to clean it up? Are they given enough time to remove it? I mean, or does it just sit there?
We'd start compliance, and depending on how they responded, I mean, I can't predict the
Okay.
events, can't predict how they do, but that's how it's done. We don't have anybody that drives around to do enforcement, so.
Okay, thank you.
Steve, did you want to comment on the screen?
The screening, basically, it says east, north, and west sides of the project site.
she's
It also,
correct.
yes, and it also says no inoperable vehicles may be visible from the county road, which means he will have to put some sort of opaque fencing also along the south side.
I might follow up and say that the 3-sided screening was based on where the neighbors were located, and there aren't any neighbors adjacent on the south side of the impound yard.
Let me see if there's any more public. Is there any more public comment? I think everybody's had their chance. I'll open it back up for y'all.
Sure. Sita, can you clarify, I guess, some environmental concerns? Really, a lot of that is handled by ADEQ, and that's complaint-driven as well?
Yes, sir.
And are there any conditions or is anything being done to mitigate any environmental concerns from the
At this point,
fluids?
I'm sorry, at this point in time, no. It did go through our technical review, and it didn't, basically, it didn't, no one said anything at the time.
Any further questions of the board?
I have one for the staff. Can you give me some compelling reasons that this was a CUP, and also some compelling reasons that this board should deny?
Unfortunately, I cannot give you compelling reasons as to why you should deny, because that's subjective, and our stance is to be neutral. As far as why this is a CUP, Washington County has one zoning, which is agricultural use / single-family residential use, and any use that is not agricultural or single-family residential has to come through with a conditional use permit, such as a business of this nature or any other nature. That's basically how our zoning works in a very small nutshell.
Excuse my ignorance, but thank you.
Of course.
Any other questions? What's your pleasure? Entertain a motion?
I'm under the impression that various people in that immediate area where we are had submitted letters, comments, and I have been informed that there's in excess of, say, a dozen. If that would be the case and they were to be presented here, I'm curious as to how many of those that were submitted agreed with this. Thank you.
Out of all the comments we received, they were all opposed.
Yeah, I reviewed them, they're all negative,
Can I talk one more time?
All right, well, we're going to close, we don't want to just debate back and forth, but come ahead and then we'll close it unless you have something else to mitigate the concerns. That's really what we're into now.
The full reason for this, and I didn't tell you guys this in the start, the full reason for this is to have a towing facility in that area, where if you have to cut somebody out of a car, one of your family members in a car over a bank, we have to stabilize it to cut them out with jaws of life. I don't really want to wait for my wife and my little girl to be laying out there and wait on a wrecker to come from Greenland or West Fork when there's one right there at the interstate.
All right, thank you. All right, what's your pleasure?
Well, I'll just start off by saying that I have concerns about water quality and environmental concerns, as well as not having fencing around the entire property. So those are my two sticking points at this point.
We could definitely amend the conditions to add that fourth side to the privacy fence. It'd be no problem. And if you had any suggestions about fluid catchment or anything like that, then we could revisit this, but
I wish I did, but that's
Up to you.
over my head, honestly.
yes, sir.
Well, council, I've never had it where I didn't have a motion either way. What happens if I can't get a motion? I've never
I
had
mean,
to
you
ask
gotta
that
have a
before.
motion to do something.
Right.
We've got to get past it, whether you approve it, deny it, or you postpone it to the next meeting, and request some additional information from staff. But we'll sit here until we get a motion, just procedurally.
All right.
I'll make a motion that we approve it.
There's a motion to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any other discussion? Probably ask for a roll call if I could.
Randy Laney,
No?
Philip Humbard,
Yes.
Walter Jennings,
No.
Joel Kelsey,
No.
Robert Dowdy,
No.
Jay Piercy,
No.
Neil Helm.
Yes.
So that's 2 for, and 6 against.
Okay, so the motion to approve fails, and so I assume someone would like to make a motion to deny.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to deny.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All right. Anybody gonna change your vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, it fails. Approval. Other business? Mr. Nathan?
I think Carl was.
Oh.
Kelly was right, so he wants to.
Yeah. I mean, we can. I assume you know, but you have a right to appeal. I just figured staff would communicate with you later, but they're all wanting to make sure you understand that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's fine.
yeah. Go ahead, Nathan.
Thank you. So I'm going to present some options for the minor subdivision changes that we've come up with, and be doing a lot of reading, but I've got a couple diagrams at the end that'll kind of show a timeline, and I think towards the end, once I pull it all together, it'll make a little better sense. So the minor subdivision review process is unnecessarily cumbersome for the applicants, the planning board, the planning department, and the assessor's office. The County Land Development Code of Ordinances that applies to minor subdivisions is as follows. A minor subdivision consists of 4 lots or less. It goes through the full planning process, including a vote by the planning board and being filed as a subdivision with the circuit clerk's office, then being processed as a subdivision by the assessor following that. A replat is the process of changing a previously approved land development, either by alteration of a lot, parcel, or tract, or the placement of another type of development on a lot or tract different from the one previously contemplated when originally approved, or by other changes made to the original plat. So it basically means a replat is whenever you change an existing subdivision lot. All replats must go through the planning process as set out in section 11-51, or may be done administratively if it qualifies for such. Section 1151 sets forth the procedures, requirements, minimum standards, specifications, and acceptance criteria for the development of all unincorporated land under the jurisdiction of the planning board. Said land development shall include, but not limited to, tract splits, large-scale development, subdivision, improvement of industrial, residential and commercial developments, mobile home parks. The purpose of the road development guidelines and standards contained herein is to contribute to the dual function of traffic circulation and means for access to land and water. Several types of very small-scale development are exempt from the planning board review and are referred to as exemptions. The exemption code as it applies to minor subdivisions is as follows. The division of land into 4 parcels, 3 of which must be at least 5 acres, and 1 of which may be at least 1 acre. Excuse me. The division of land creating no more than 4 lots, regardless of size and public road frontage, that is in a territorial planning area and has been approved by the Planning Commission of the appropriate city. Section 11-112 states that no plat of any tract of land within the planning area jurisdiction of the Washington County Planning Board or one of the city's growth areas shall be accepted by the county recorder for filing unless it's been approved by the planning board or by the Washington County Planning Administrative Officer. The code also states that administrative handling of certain planning issues, replats of lots within a subdivision may be approved administratively by the planning administrative officer if such is in an extraterritorial planning area of a city. If the city has approved such, and there are no utility issues, and that the lot is at least 10,000 square feet. In addition to the planning review of these projects, the Arkansas Department of Health, or ADH, and the County Fire Marshal have requirements for these minor subdivisions. The requirement for the Health Department is such that when creating 3 or more lots under 3 acres each, or 3 under 3, ADH requires the proposal to be reviewed as a subdivision by their engineering section in Little Rock. The only additional information the applicant needs to provide for this review are 2 perk tests instead of 1, spot elevations on the 4 corners of the proposed primary and alternate septic fields. Generally, the county fire marshal doesn't review minor subdivisions. Only when the minor subdivision plan or exempt lot split is proposing 3 or more lots does the fire marshal review the plans, and then has additional requirements when there are proposed homes at greater than 3,600 square feet. So to summarize, a lot split creating 4 lots or less requires minor subdivision review. There are several ways in which a minor sub can be exempted from planning board review. The only remaining trigger for minor subdivision to come to the planning board is if the split proposes to create more than 1 lot at less than 5 acres, or in the case of a replat, if the subject property is an existing subdivision lot. When a minor subdivision is inside a city's planning area, including replatting an existing subdivision lot, once the city has approved it, Washington County's review is always administrative. When a lot split is creating 3 or more lots, it goes to the fire marshal for review. And when a lot split is creating 3 or more lots at less than 3 acres each, it goes to the health department to be reviewed as a subdivision. This timeline illustrates the existing 5-week review cycle. It includes technical review, resubmittal, neighbor notification, staff reports, planning board. After planning board, we're gathering signatures and filing the plat at the circuit clerk's office. The existing process takes 5 weeks, plus the time it takes to gather signatures from all the utilities, health department, fire marshal, planning department, road department, county judge. Sometimes this signature gathering phase can take a week or longer. So I've created 3 options for you to review. The first option is to only take minor subdivisions as far as tech review and resubmittal. Once the applicant addresses all the requirements and resubmits the plat showing all the required elements, they will be approved to gather signatures and file it with the circuit clerk. This option will decrease approval time, won't require planning board approval, and it still gets reviewed by all the jurisdictional entities, but changes very little. Some of the obvious issues this option still doesn't address is that the proposal can only be submitted on submittal day, so only once every 5 weeks. The review period is still 2 weeks long, and it still costs $250. Gathering signatures is still required, which takes time and is only possible during the business day. So unless they've hired one of the full-service surveying companies, the applicant will potentially have to take time away from work to acquire signatures. Also, this option will still be filed as a subdivision with the circuit clerk, so it comes to the assessor's office with the correct information. But the assessor's office is wanting to eliminate processing these as subdivisions. They would rather process them as simple surveys or exemptions. Second option is to change the allowance from 1 lot at less than 5 acres to 2 lots at less than 3 acres. Then if it qualifies for this minor subdivision with the 3 under 3 trigger, then it will go only as far as tech review and resubmittal, similar to the first option. And lastly, the third option is to make minor subdivisions completely administrative. Planning staff will review it the same as a typical lot split, except compliance with the health department and the county fire marshal will be required. The typical timeline of a project like this will be for the applicant to submit a lot split yielding 3 or 4 lots to the fire marshal, or if it yields 3 under 3, it will be submitted to the health department as well, all before submitting it to the planning department. At that point, the planning department's review will be administrative and can typically be processed in less than an hour. This will drastically reduce planning staff's review time. It won't require planning board approval while still being fully reviewed by the health department and the fire marshal, and the signature gathering phase will be eliminated. And so what's next? Now that I've presented the 3 options of how to revise the minor subdivision code, are there any questions?
Yeah, option 3.
Yes, sir.
What's the significance, or what would be the ramifications if signatures aren't required by I'm assuming that's by the neighbors?
The signatures are from all the jurisdictional entities.
Okay, all right.
And on a typical minor subdivision, our tech review process is about 4 or 5 minutes, just like it is here at the planning board. And I say the tech review process, the tech review meeting. The gathering all the technical information basically goes at the same pace as a regular project. We send out a letter and wait for them to send something back, which a lot of times they don't. Sometimes they do. But the requirements are very typical and are usually boilerplate. They're copy and pasted from the previous one. What would happen without the signatures? The plat would then be a survey instead of a plat, and it wouldn't convey property. It wouldn't convey county road right-of-way. But our county road department has a right-of-way dedication form that could be employed for that. Answer your question, sir?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yes, sir.
I had a couple. One of them is, how would we, what would you propose to, have a visibility to the public? I would assume through this meeting of what's been done in the last month. Have you thought about that? Would you publish a report? Would we just have it as part of our agenda to know any?
We could definitely put together a report, do every meeting for how many of these we've done. Excuse me, keep hitting that button. But it just kind of depends on what the board wants.
Yeah, I was just.
We've had some controversial minor subdivisions, a couple. In my time, I counted them up the other day. I've had them in the neighborhood of 65 in the 4 years that I've been here. And none of them were denied, not one.
Yeah.
A few of them were tabled, quite a few, or several were tabled. Some of them died. Once they were tabled, they forgot about it and didn't come back. But none of them have been denied.
Yeah. My other question was for Brian. I assume you all have collaborated these meet.
And let me just say,
Okay.
pardon me, but let me just say, I came to you first, and I was going to poll the board, and then I was going to take this to Brian.
Okay.
And once we get that kind of buttoned up, then we'd report back to you and take it to the quorum court.
Okay.
And thank you.
Okay, sorry. Do you have a recommendation?
Option 3, completely administrative. And I don't necessarily think we're voting on anything on this here. I wanted to kind of get your take on things, and I have a couple more questions here, just to kind of get you thinking. And I don't necessarily need anything from you tonight either, but I would like for you to kind of give me some of your input whenever I send an email out next week, just to kind of see where everyone's thoughts are. So my last question was, does the board have any suggestions, or excuse me, which one do they prefer? Does the board have any suggestions? Something to think about. Don't have to answer now.
So when you review these, do you review them against a standard checklist?
Yes, sir. We have all of our projects have checklists, except for the CUP has a checklist, but it's very broad, very subjective. All of our other projects have very defined objective checklists, including the minor subdivision. And I believe that the minor subdivision checklist isn't any more detailed or stringent, however you want to put it, than the regular lot split. But we have one additional requirement, and that's that you perk test the ground on a minor sub.
So the checklist used on any one of these options would be the same?
I appreciate you working on it. I know we've been literally talking about it for 4 or 5 years to get something to make it easier for the folks to, to get things processed. And I'm a big fan, as long as we're not, avoiding our responsibilities as a planning board, but as long as we could draft it in a way that would, be binding legally, I would be all for it. I think it would help a lot.
I'm for the same option. I just make sure, could we get rid of the subdivision name somehow?
That was
Oh, yeah.
that was my
Yeah.
next
We
just come up with a
question.
clever
We wouldn't
name,
even
yeah.
call it minor sub anymore.
Yeah, just something.
Yeah.
Every time I say it, I have to explain it.
Yeah, I just think if you change the name to lot splits, just plain the lot split,
Lot splits.
you know, I
Or-
think that takes care of it. We talked about it in those meetings.
A lot of the cities call them
Subdivision scares them, and
concurrent
everybody
plat.
thinks that the 100 houses are moving.
Yeah,
in.
or the division of, instead of
Yeah, division,
subdivision,
yeah.
maybe just the division
So-
of.
Right?
But if you're polling, I'm with option 3 as well.
So my next set of notes here is, next I will take these options to the county attorney for his review with your preferences and suggestions indicated. And then once the county attorney is satisfied, I'll take these code revisions to the quorum court for their review and discussion, and ultimately to try to get a vote on that. So I'll send an email out to y'all sometime next week and kind of outline a lot of this and put the presentation in there to kind of trigger your memory a little bit. And let's have a little bit of a discussion, and then I'll get with county attorney soon after, and we'll see
I
if
have
we
a
can get this
question.
thing moving along. Yes, sir.
My observation and expectation is that you're going to have significant in demand for small parcels
Mhm.
because of the growth. And for instance, in my part of the county, we just can't hardly find a small parcel to sell.
Yeah.
It just.
I believe this will bring some more people into our area. Maybe some more people want to live out in the county on a smaller parcel they can afford, for example.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
I think you're going to see multiples of what you're currently doing.
On the flip side, I think a lot of people will say, not in my backyard. I moved out to the county, so everyone would have 10 acres and so forth.
Well,
And so we're going to get it from both
Yeah.
sides.
You are going to see that, and there is going to be some pushback against it. But when you have growth, these people, everybody wants to live in the county, except for the people right in Fayetteville. They don't want to live in the county, you know. But nonetheless, there is a high demand for it. Not just gonna, it's current.
Coming from you, sir, I expect that you've done some studying on the subject
Well,
over your
we've,
years.
you know, 10, 15, 20 years ago, we were more aggressive with this, and then after the last, of course, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, it slowed down because of the economy, but nonetheless, we just don't have any. We don't have any to market at this time. And consequently, there'll be some activity.
I would, not necessarily end, but I would also say that 5 lots or more is still going to be a subdivision.
Yes, sir.
And we're still going to have the maximum split count allowed on a parent parcel. But it hasn't been revised in a while, and so I think that might be coming before you sometime in the future. Maybe putting a kind of a time limit on the split count. It hasn't changed since I've been here. It's always been back to 2006, and so that was 8 years when I started, and now it's 13 years. And so there'll be a split count max. 5 lots is a subdivision.
Counsel, you had.
Yeah, I was just going to let you know, as far as when you're looking at this, don't worry about whether or not you're going to be derelict in your duty. Your duties, what you would do would be to approve or recommend for approval something. Ultimately, that has to be codified and passed by the quorum court. Quorum court is the one that sets what the duties of the planning board, the planning department, all of us for that matter that work for the county. So I wouldn't let that worry you on, are we going to be doing our jobs? Because ultimately, it's not your decision, the quorum court, and if they think, hey, this is a good idea, they have the power and the ability to implement that.
I just wanted to hear you say it on record. Good. All right. Anything else, Nathan?
The only other business is our next meetings are May 2nd, July 6th, and we'll see you there. Pardon me, May 2nd, June 6th.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you.
Do you perceive further zoning in our county from residential and agricultural?